My name is Isaiah James. I'm Senior Policy Advisor for the Black Veterans Project. But I don't want to talk about myself. I was exposed to burn pits. I got 2 tours in Iraq, 1 tour in Afghanistan as a combat infantryman. But I want to talk about Private Mooney. I want to talk about Private Thomas. I want to talk about my brother, Sergeant Wesley Black. Sergeant Wesley Black's in his mid-30s, like me. Sergeant Wesley Black was an infantryman, like me. Sergeant Wesley Black deployed to Afghanistan, like me. Yesterday, Sergeant Wesley Black told me he was going into hospice care. Sergeant Wesley Black has stage 4 colon cancer. Sergeant Wesley Black was denied the treatment at the VA that would have caught his cancer early and would have saved his life. Sergeant Wesley Black is not an aberration. Sergeant Wesley Black is millions of veterans across this nation that are denied health care and benefits from the very government that they were called to serve. And how serendipitous that we walk these halls and I see the American flag, but I also see the MIA POW flag. Prisoner of war, missing in action. America on this issue is missing in action. Our Congress on this issue is missing in action. The Fourth Estate, the media on this issue is absolutely missing in action. Veterans Day is coming up. We don't need your pancakes. We don't need half-off mattresses. We don't need to get in front at the movie theater line. What we need for you to do, America, the American public, the American legislative body, is to enact legislation that will take care of those who want in your name. We gave you our lives. We gave you our mental health. We gave you our very physical bodies. We laid it out for this nation. All we are asking for is not more. We're not asking for less. We're asking for equal. Give us what you promised us. Thank you.
I'm John Stewart. Post 9/11, there was a long fight to get New York City's first responders appropriate help to pay for medical costs from the long-term toxic exposures to the collapsed buildings in Lower Manhattan. The nation, and eventually Congress, stood behind our heroes. But now more than ever, we need to focus our support on the post 9/11 war veterans who've been suffering from the debilitating effects of the massive toxic burn pits they were exposed to during service overseas. The effects have been horrific. Affected veterans face increasingly complex health problems that have already left a growing number of them unable to work. 3.5 million veterans and service members may have been affected by our generation's Agent Orange. Health problems like lung diseases, cancers, toxic brain injuries, many of them very similar to what the 9/11 first responders have faced. Many of them dying as a result of these complications. If you're one of our vets who's suffering, then we need to get in the fight for you now. Fortunately, there's organizations like Burn Pits 360 that have been fighting to get the appropriate funding and help for our forgotten heroes. We're long overdue on getting the medical, financial assistance they gravely need. Go to www.burnpits360.org today and learn more about signing up for the VA registry and your free VA burn pit exam. www.burnpits360.org. You deserve more than the country's gratitude for your service. You deserve full medical benefits to help with your illness. Together, we're going to work to get you justice, to get you healed. Thanks.
Ken Gordon. I'm a reporter for the Columbus Dispatch. I first became aware of the burn pit issue 2017, I guess it was, where Susan Zier, who, if you don't know her, you will soon, contacted me on behalf of her son-in-law and daughter and what they were going through with his illnesses and the burn pit exposure. I had no idea what she was talking about, but fortunately for me, I did pursue that story and get to know some incredible people. So I have done a few stories on that issue over the years, and I'm very honored to be asked to moderate this today. It is personal to me. I did not serve myself. My grandfather was a U.S. Navy veteran of World War II, participated in D-Day. I had an uncle who was in the Marines in the 60s. and I married an Army vet, so I'm well versed in this issue. So it's an honor and a privilege to be here and introduce our speakers today. The first one is a pleasant last-minute addition to our roster, and that is State Senator Herschel Craig, who's the Assistant Minority Whip in our State Senate, representing the 15th District, and also a veteran of the U.S. Army and a parachutist in the 82nd Airborne. So with all due honor and respect, State Senator Craig.
First of all, let me thank you for the privilege of being with you today. Certainly, Paul, the invitation to speak today. I'm deeply humbled. I'm deeply humbled. I come as a Vietnam era veteran, and as I looked at that video today, it was just startling. It was deeply troubling. And so let me try to proceed with my very brief remarks today. I apologize to you. I will need to leave shortly for other commitments, but I wanted to be here today, especially regarding this issue. So let me thank you for inviting me to attend this important panel on how we can best support veterans who have been affected by exposure to the smoke and fumes generated by open burn pits. The burning of chemicals, human waste, metal, plastics, rubber, and so many other substances has had a deleterious effect, a detrimental effect on veterans who served in Afghanistan, Djibouti, Syria, Uzbekistan during the Persian Gulf War from September 19 to 2001 onward, and in the Southwest Asian Theater of Operations starting from August the 2nd to 1992 today. As many of you know, researchers, including experts at the Department of Veterans Affairs, are actively studying airborne hazards like burn pits and other military environmental exposures. This essential ongoing research will help establish a comprehensive understanding of the potential long-term health effects and provide veterans with better care and services. Since the VA has taken the initiative to research the health impact, they have found that these long-term effects, including asthma, along with many other issues, with a myriad of cancers and constructive bronchitis. For example, over a year ago, the Lancaster Eagle Gazette detailed the struggle of the late Mr. Heath Robinson, who was diagnosed with small cell cancer after serving for a year in the Middle East. He was 39 years old when he lost his battle with cancer. Mr. Robinson was a non-smoker, and his doctor said the only way he could have contracted this fatal disease was by being exposed to the toxic substances created by burn pits. In the article, he discussed how heart-wrenching it was when he could only play. He could only play with his 60-year-old daughter for a few minutes at a time because of his health. Every parent deserves to have the opportunity to play with their child. Unfortunately, Mr. Robinson is not the only one with this deadly exposure. It is believed that 3.5 million veterans were exposed to these toxins. Even President Biden believes that these burn pits are the genesis of his son Bo's cancer. I appreciate U.S. Senator Sherrod Brown and Congressman Tim Ryan for introducing companion bills in Congress to implement reporting requirements for veterans who have been exposed to open burn pits. My office and I are also exploring statewide policies to ensure that there are health care protections for veterans experiencing health problems because of burn pit exposures. We are looking at resolutions passed in Arizona and New Jersey urging Congress to recognize or fund research for burn pits, and those passed in Louisiana, Texas, and Vermont, creating a statewide burn pit registry. Researching the health impacts of burn pits is the least that we can do to ensure that veterans exposed to deadly toxins are receiving the medical attention that they deserve. I feel strongly that this serious issue will garner bipartisan support as we look at ways to support our veterans. The truth of the matter is freedom is not free. These men and women continuing to lay down their lives to be in harm's way. And we must ensure that they get the proper medical care that they so deserve. So certainly want to thank all of you and your presence for being here today, and certainly this distinguished panel in their discussion here today. But we have work to do. We have work to do to ensure that all of our families and children, those veterans that they're continuing to pay the ultimate price, that we would be here today. So God bless you, and I look forward to the discussion today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Craig. And as Paul referenced, our Congressman Tim Ryan was held up by the filibuster last night. However, we are in contact with him, and I believe we will be able to maybe put him on speakerphone and have him answer some of your questions a little later. So we appreciate Senator Craig certainly for stopping by. And we do have a short video from Representative Ryan that I think we'll show now.
Hi, I'm Congressman Tim Ryan. Advocating on behalf of veterans has remained a priority of mine in Congress since day one, because I know that our work to take care of those who serve our nation doesn't stop after they've hung up their uniform. Along with mental health, I believe the most pressing issue facing our veterans today is the fallout from exposure to toxic burn pits. We've got to fix this in Congress, and the time is now. Not next year, not 5 years from now, not a decade from now, now. And we cannot turn our back on the thousands of men and women who spent the last 20 years fighting our nation's longest wars. Men like Sergeant First Class Heath Robinson, who left behind his wife and 6-year-old daughter at the age of only 39 after battling a rare form of lung cancer. Oncologists say only strikes elderly women who've inhaled toxic substances. We must do everything in our power to prevent a tragedy like this from happening ever again. That's why I'm fighting in Congress to get our veterans exposed to toxic burn pits the resources they need, like presumptive benefits and life-saving preventative screenings. This year, I introduced Sergeant First Class Heath Robinson Burn Pit Transparency Act in Heath's honor. This bill would require the VA to document all veterans that may have been exposed to burn pits and notify us here in Congress every quarter. The VA would also have to submit a report twice a year informing us of the outcome of their claims. This bill will give the VA the data it needs to support presumptive claims and ensure that these burn pit veterans are monitored and treated long before receiving a terminal diagnosis, a diagnosis like the one Heath received. I'm so glad to see this administration trying to get ahead of this issue by adding new presumptive conditions, looking at rare respiratory cancers, improving data, training, and awareness, and expanding eligibility for VA health care. But we know this alone is not enough. That's why I'm proudly fighting on behalf of veterans to get important legislation passed to enshrine our unwavering commitment to those who've served our nation into law. Please know that I always have and will always have your back here in Congress. Thank you.
Not here. All right, let's get to our panel. I'm going to take this off. I hate sounding muffled. As I mentioned earlier, Susan Zier is our first speaker. She's from Sandusky, Ohio, the mother-in-law of the late Heath Robinson. She's been a fierce advocate here in Ohio for Burn Pits 360. She collected and delivered 1,700 signed letters requesting that the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee hold a hearing on burn pits exposure, and she was successful, and they did. It was the first hearing they've had on that issue. So I know her as a force of nature and one tough mother, Susan Zier.
Thank you. As the mother-in-law of an Iraq War veteran, on March 21st, 2017, I came to realize that thousands of our service members have returned from Iraq and Afghanistan suffering from a constellation of debilitating and chronic diseases. Around noon on that fateful day, my phone rang with the caller ID telling me it was my daughter, Danielle. Sorry. I knew she was with her active duty soldier, Heath Robinson, at a local cancer center in Columbus, Ohio. Anxiously waiting for news and knowing that Heath had already been diagnosed with a rare autoimmune disease called mucous membrane pemphigoid, which caused him to suffer chronic gushing nosebleeds and bleeding from his ears. We were hopeful after being told the disease was manageable, but having cancer was another story. I answered the phone like I always do when I know it's her. Hi, sweetie. I instantly heard a distraught wail. No mother ever wants to hear from her child. I couldn't understand a word, but I knew it was bad, really bad. Eventually, Danielle was able to express that the doctor walked in and the first words out of his mouth were, "What the hell have you been exposed to?" He explained that Heath had an extremely rare form of stage 4 lung cancer and that his prognosis was grim. If the cancer couldn't be controlled by treatments, Heath only had weeks to live. I soon learned the horrifying meaning of two simple words, burn pits. The only thing that even remotely explained this type of cancer and rare autoimmune disease was Heath's exposure to burn pits on Camp Victory, where for 3 months of his deployment, he stood guard at a post only yards from one. Fortunately, the oncologist was able to get the cancer under control with a variety of cancer treatments, extending Heath's life for 3 years. Heath was officially medically retired from the military in November of 2019, and a month later he was granted full disability by the VA, with qualifying factors being his lung cancer had been established as directly related to military service. He was rated as having a total and permanent disability resulting from his service-connected conditions, and Heath was a recently retired combat veteran. By December of 2019, it became clear that Danielle, who works full-time, needed help both in caring for her husband and their young daughter, so I left my home in Sandusky and moved in with them. Soon after, Heath's rapidly declining health required round-the-clock care, and they were encouraged to apply for the VA's program of comprehensive assistance for the family caregiver so that Danielle could take an unpaid leave of absence from her job and be compensated. To be eligible, a veteran must have incurred a serious injury or illness in the line of duty on or after September 11, 2001, that renders the veteran in need of personal care required in everyday living in order to live safely. They were denied. The explanation of the caregiver benefit being denied specified that even though Danielle was providing a high level of care and extensive assistance with medications, appointments, activities of daily living and mobility, monitoring vital signs, and helping him crawl up the steps so he could bathe, in reality, it was much more than that. Heath had spontaneous gushing nosebleeds while vomiting, rendering him unable to have the oxygen tube in his nose. We would hold basins to catch the blood and vomit while shoving the oxygen tube in his mouth in between vomiting spasms so he wouldn't die. This was physically and emotionally draining for Danielle and I, especially Danielle, who would go for days without sleep, causing her to collapse or pass out a few times. None of us ever got enough sleep, including their daughter, Brielle, due to Heath's constant and chronic cough. At any moment on any given day, Heath would have to be rushed to the nearest ER because he couldn't breathe. For the final month before Heath passed, one of us had to be with him at all times because he became suicidal. Heath begged us to overdose him, and since we refused, we feared he would do it himself. We never left him alone after that. The reason given for denial by the VA was that his lung cancer was not a qualifying illness because there is no evidence the cancer was a result of burn pits exposure nor combat related. Had the presumptive benefits legislation been law 2 years ago, Heath would have been approved. His case is just one of thousands showing why our War on Terror veterans need the Warfighter Act to be signed into law. Heath passed on May 6, 2020, at age 39. A couple days later, Danielle received a letter from the Veterans Administration regarding the appeal they submitted after being denied. The letter explained that the committee was meeting on May 6 to consider Heath's appeal when they received word of his death. Therefore, the case has been dropped. The letter signed off with condolences to Danielle and how appreciative they are of Mr. Robinson's service and for Danielle's commitment as his caregiver. The VA thanked Danielle for taking care of their soldier, the one they denied caregiver benefits for. Thank you.
See what I mean? Our next speaker is Tim Hauser. He's from Twinsburg, Ohio. Served in the Air Force in Desert Storm. He's been working for 25 years now to, fighting the VA to get his care approved. And so he's really working now to bring awareness to these issues, and he's also facing a lung transplant. So please welcome Tim Hauser.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for coming out today to listen to us here. And hopefully y'all learned something, and hopefully you can get some of you motivated so you can call your congressmen and senators to ask them to, not ask, but demand that they support legislative to help us get our presumptive benefits. And like he had just mentioned, I was in Desert Storm. I was in the United States Air Force, and I was assigned to King Fahd Air Base in Dhahran, Saudi Arabia for a year. And during that time, I personally helped ignite a burn pit. And when all that diesel smoke started coming up, I even asked the commander who was standing next to me, said, "Are we going to get any type of protection?" He says, "No, you don't need it. It's not going to bother you at all. Just go about your business." So we kept, throwing fuel onto the fire, and fire kept getting bigger, pit kept getting bigger. When I left, the burn pit was about the size of 10 football fields. It burned 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now, where I was stationed at in Dhahran, I was 5 miles away from the closest oil well in Iraq. What a lot of people don't realize is Iraq set every single one of their oil wells on fire as a biological and environmental weapon against us. So not only did we have the burn pits, we had the oil well fire fumes we were breathing 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and sometimes that smoke was so thick we couldn't even launch any aircraft. But they were telling us it was fog. But it wasn't fog. That smoke was so oily, your skin turned black, your food tasted like diesel fuel, and your uniforms were so soaked with oil that you had to take the uniform off just so you could walk because it got too heavy. Now, when I got out in the Air Force in 1992, at that time I was a marathon runner. And, when I came back to George Air Force Base in California, I immediately had to do my annual physical training, and part of that was run 2.5 miles. I couldn't even finish that. And I was a marathon runner, and I ran every day while I was over in the war. So I was in shape, I just couldn't breathe. So when I got out and started trying to get help through the VA, they kept denying me access to VA benefits at first because, well, lo and behold, my medical records were lost. Contacted a bunch of my old buddies that were stationed with me in the Air Force, and same thing with them. Their medical records were lost. So it sounded like the medical records were lost on purpose. So after 5 years of fighting, I finally got into the VA system. But what a lot of people don't realize is the VA is not free until you get a service connection. So not only were the medical bills piling up, but the depression was piling up. And if I didn't meet my wife, Marcy, I would not be standing here today. Through several bankruptcies because of medical bills, losing jobs because I just physically could not do the work anymore because I was in auto factories and stuff. I couldn't do it anymore. Now I'm in customer service. I'm on the phones all the time. I just had to go to part-time because I cannot talk that long without losing my oxygen level and come close to passing out when I talk. I've been diagnosed with constrictive bronchiolitis, interstitial lung disease. There's some gastro problems going on as well, which they really haven't diagnosed yet. But now it looks like I also have what's called pulmonary hypertension or pulmonary high blood pressure. The blood vessels in my lungs are thinning out so bad that the heart can't pump blood through them anymore. So that's why I'm going to need a lung transplant here soon. But when I started going through this process, my brother, who was a veteran, served in Vietnam, also served in Desert Storm. He ended up committing suicide because of all of his problems. So I started advocating for that and for what I was going through. 25 years for the VA to finally say, hey, we know what's making you sick now. Even though the VA clearly states that if you are in Desert Storm and you are sick, we don't need a diagnosis, we're going to give you benefits. That's a lie. They denied me for 25 years. I just got my benefits last year. Finally got my service connection last year. My wife and I cried all night because finally I got some acknowledgement. Some. Look at Paul. Look at Andrea. They're not getting their benefits. Do they need to go through 25 years of fighting too? I don't think so. That's why I'm here today. I'm not giving up the fight. Even though I got mine, they haven't gotten theirs yet. They're my brothers and sisters. Kevin, who got me involved with Burn Pits 360, when he saw that I was advocating on my own on Facebook, sends me a message. Call me. I'm like, I don't know who you are. So now I send him a message. I don't know who you are. And he says, dude, call me. This will change your life. So my wife Marcy says, yeah, go ahead, call. So I called him. And he mentioned who he was. He says, hey, I'm in Burn Pits 360. We're working with John Stewart. We're trying to get benefits for us. Can you come and help us fight? And with Marcy there, I said, yeah, most definitely. This fight isn't over. And that's why I'm here today to ask every single one of you, to please call your congressmen, call your senators, call your state representatives as well. Demand that they take care of us. We put our lives on the line. We dedicated ourselves to protecting this country, and now this country's turning its back on us. Now, the reason I brought up state representatives is because there is a organization in the state of Ohio called the Ohio Veteran Service Commission. They are here for us to help us with anything from filing claims with the VA, financial aid, help us get food, help us house payments in case we lose our jobs and we need help with that. Now, when it came time for me to work on appeals on my claims and everything, I went through them, and unfortunately they knew nothing about burn pits. And through more research, they didn't even know how to get to the burn pit registry. They didn't even know until recently that there was a registry. So that's why I'm asking you to call your state representatives as well, so we can get the help for these other veterans that the VA keeps denying health care for. All right? Thank you.
Boy, if this stuff doesn't make you mad, I don't know what will. All right, our next speaker I met, again, as part of that story I did originally a couple of years ago. She's from Pomeroy, Ohio, an Army veteran who also, like Tim, has a debilitating lung disease, constrictive bronchiolitis, and has also been fighting fiercely to the point where she, at one point, directly contacted the former Veterans Affairs Secretary, Robert McDonald, by email just to get her claim taken seriously. So another tough veteran in the fight. Please welcome Andrea Knightley.
Okay, as you see, it's a burn pit cough, not COVID. Well, I moved since he did the story on me, but I still live in Meigs County, so I'm a born-bred Ohio girl, Southern Ohio girl. OU, oh yeah. Anyway, from August of 2005 to August of 2006, I was at Camp Bucca, Iraq. I would spend 1 to 3 days a month in our burn pit, which our base burn pit is roughly the size of the blueprint of this building. And I would have to burn papers. I had no gear. I'm just sitting there stirring the fires to make sure all our FOUO, which is for official use only, and classified paperwork actually burned. So I'd spend the whole day in there burning papers and breathing in the smoke. And I mean, I got directly into the smoke. I know of other people from the unit I was deployed with. Unfortunately, I was deployed with the Michigan unit. I love my Michigan people, but they were a Michigan unit, so we'll leave it at that. But there was a couple of them. I know one, he survived his cancer. Another one had a rare cancer like Heath, and he passed away from it. I've been trying to help others from that unit get their service connection after I finally got mine. Like Ken said, I filed for my claim April of 2011. VA did my first CMP exam. My CMP examiner based her decision off of when I got out of active duty and moved back up to Ohio from Georgia. And if anybody's been to Georgia, you know how pollen season is. If you never had sinus problems in Ohio, you go to Georgia, you'll have sinus problems. So she's like, oh, sinus congestion and postnasal drip from Ohio weather. They had the letter from my pulmonary doctor at Cincinnati VA who stated that my lung problems were from the burn pits. Nothing else could be causing my respiratory problems but the burn pits. So they still denied it. I went and got my records from growing up in Ohio, my health records, to show that I've never had sinus problems in Ohio. They still denied it. Secretary McDonald took over. He put out his email address. I talked with my VSO, my Veteran Service organization that I was using to help with my claim, which was Wounded Warrior Project, and he was like, contact him. The only thing that's going to Only thing it won't do is they won't do anything. He's like, the best they'll do is get it taken care of. So I emailed him. Within a week of emailing Secretary McDonald, I heard from Undersecretary Allison Hickey. She got all my information, got me set up with a new CMP exam. My new CMP exam was December 2nd of 2014. They had my decision by December 19th of 2014. I got my letter January 8th of 2015, which was roughly a month after the VA finally approved me of getting a lung biopsy, because I had to go through 2 years of tests to get a lung biopsy approved. Why? Because I wasn't a smoker, and I was under the age of 35. So according to the VA, I should be healthy and should not have any lung problems. So 2 years of tests to prove that, yes, there's something wrong with my lungs. They finally got my biopsy approved to be done. January of 2015, got my award letter from the VA saying, you're 100% service connected because your lungs are so bad and there's no turning back. My cardiopulmonary stress test forced expiration volume, the FEV1 levels, showed a 14.1 milliliter per kilogram per minute, or kilogram per milliliter. All those letters get all confused to me. So basically, yeah, I could barely breathe. And May of 2015, they did my lung biopsy. August of 2015, I went back to the doctor. My original pulmonary doctor retired, so I didn't get to see him again. His replacement tells me what's wrong with my lungs. He's like, you have constrictive bronchiolitis, you have pulmonary fibrosis, interstitial lung disease, small airway injury, and minute, and I'm not going to pronounce this word correctly, meningothelial nodules. They're basically non-cancerous nodules in my lungs. And they'll worry about those if they start growing. But my biggest thing, he tells me, lose weight and my breathing will be fine. At that, I was like, yeah, we're done here. I now see a pulmonary doctor who did his residency under my original VA doctor. He sent me to a rheumatologist, and I just had my appointments with them on Wednesday. The rheumatologist has decided to try me on a drug that has been around for decades that was originally given to kidney transplant recipients to prevent kidney transplant rejection, that they discovered helps with rheumatoid arthritis. And in the past 18 months, they've been using it for RA sufferers that have rheumatoid arthritis-related interstitial lung diseases. And even though mine's not rheumatoid arthritis-related, he wants to try me on this to see if it helps to reduce my use of prednisone. Because I would spend 1 week every month taking prednisone. And all that steroid uses has messed up my kidneys, has messed up my adrenal glands. And the VA doesn't really care too much when I had a doctor try to get me oxygen, because when my lungs flare up, I have to have oxygen to calm them down. It's the only thing that works. VA was like, first time they denied it was, well, we can't give you oxygen because then your lungs will become too dependent on oxygen. I'm like, we require oxygen to live anyway, so how would I become too dependent on it? It took 18 trips to the ER. And then they also were like, oh, here's albuterol inhalers. Developed an allergy to albuterol. So it's an allergy that can kill me. And in conclusion, in the words of a friend of mine who also suffers from burn pit issues, who lives down in Georgia, we were all killed over there. Our bodies just hasn't died yet.
All right, well, we heard briefly from him earlier, but our last speaker here served in Iraq in the U.S. Army, 2004-2005. He's a state representative for Burn Pits 360, works in the critical care field, and he also, of course, works to bring attention to veterans' health issues that are presently being dismissed by providers. Please welcome Paul McMillan.
Again, thank you everyone for coming. Whether you know us, whether you're dealing with this, whether you just support us personally, it means a lot to us. Thank you to Ohio Media School, who is working very, very hard. I've not seen anything like this, but they're working miracles for us, and you guys are helping give us a voice. Most of us here have been told, there's nothing wrong with you, you're just crazy. That ain't the case, and yeah, people in this room have heard that. But you know, getting this message out there and trying to get this out there to other Ohioans so we can try and get other people in this fight and mobilizing. We're obviously behind schedule, and I feel bad about this, but I'm going to take it off schedule for just a moment here. 2 weeks ago, that first video you saw with Isaiah James was shot in the Capitol building. Kevin Hensley, one of our representatives from the Michigan team, was there, and he was in the room for one meeting with one of our senators from Ohio who had explained to us that there's not enough people who are dealing with this issue to warrant the price tag that Warfighter and PACT Act are going to cost us. There are 226,000 veterans who have signed up for the VA Burn Pit Registry already. 6,219 of them, or 15 of them, are here in Ohio. So I guess that begs a question to me of, can we please have a count on how many people have to be sick and how many people have to die so we know exactly what to bring you so that your action will take, office will take action. And for veterans, this is geared towards you today. You know, if you are someone who's not sick, that is great, but that could be you 10 years from now. If you're someone who is sick, we need you in the fight with us, not saying, well, it'll get better, because it won't. Or, hey, you know, yeah. Or, hey, you know, this is something that I'm too sick or I just can't fight. We need everybody into the legislators who we invited who did not show up today, despite that stack of people who all put on their Facebook account, hey, we support our veterans. We emailed all of them and told them that we are dying and we are sick and we need help. And so far, we have 2 offices that I'm aware of that showed up, and we are grateful for the ones that did. I'm giving a happy shout out to Senator Nolan, who said, hey, I can't support anyone coming there today, but we will have a meeting with you next week so that we can talk about this. That means something to us. So, thank you, but to the rest of the veterans, this is what we're up against. We need you guys to help us. We need senators and legislators, even on the Ohio level, to start listening to us. These are people, human beings, people who fought for you, people who bled for you, people who killed for you, people who have shattered their very psyches and their souls for you, and you are ignoring us. Now then, on to my regularly scheduled speech. I am memorializing every veteran that I can find in this issue with a dog tag. Keep in mind that I've only had about 3 hours worth of time to search because I've been so busy setting this up. However, during that time, searching obituaries and burn pits, things like that, I've come up with about 64 names. Now, when we as service members see these tags, we don't see things that are like, hey, that looks cool. We see every one of these and see a human being in it, the person that belongs to that tag. Mothers and fathers, daughters and sons, people that parents prayed to conceive. Imagine that this can here is a pile of trash that's on fire, that is a burn pit. It exemplifies how America is treating its warfighters. It's how they're treating us right now. Turns out when you have 65 people on the chain, they don't always want to listen to you. They're almost free. Okay. So, each human being. This is what we are to the VA. Too expensive. This is what we are to the Department of Defense. A hidden shame. This is what we are to so many of our legislators. Disposable. Photo ops. Keith Robinson. Preventative screening might have given him a chance. Sergeant Wesley Black. He went to the VA and asked for help. He was trying to get diagnostic screening, and they denied it to him. So they missed his cancer. It was too late. He just died a few weeks ago. Tech Sergeant Amy Mueller. When she got the results that showed that she had stage 3 pancreatic cancer, she hid around the corner from her children to take that phone call, terrified but still trying to save them from watching her get those results. Sergeant Thomas Sullivan. He was told repeatedly that he was crazy until his own brother found him dead in a recliner while his family was away. Master Sergeant Paula King. She just wanted to take care of her children and her horses. Major Gary Hughes. When he died, his family had to close their business, sell their homes, move states, and go on food stamps because no one would take care of them. Before he died, he polished his military uniform for his burial in it because he was still proud of his country. Staff Sergeant Jennifer Kepner, another veteran with pancreatic cancer. She tried to raise awareness for the rest of her life. Fortunately, she was able to help, and some good came from it, but she still died. Sergeant Amanda Downing. She was 24 years old. When she died, she had 24 members of her high school JROTC in formation, one for every per year of her short life. We go to our doctors. We don't see anything wrong. Conventional testing doesn't show anything. You should be happy for your healthy lungs. Move out. We have other patients with real needs. We go back to our doctors. Your issues are psychiatric. We're going to put you on antidepressants and psychotropics. By the way, these medicines are also considered hazardous. We try to go to our legislators. My boss supports and loves veterans. We're putting out all kinds of bills. We won't get you any type of care, but we will work on unending research and your college fund. Here's a card. We've got another meeting. Sergeant Daniel Sommers. This sergeant committed suicide, leaving a note detailing all the ways the world would be better off without him, while citing his mysterious illnesses that the VA refused to acknowledge. And on that note, veterans, we need you helping us. We need you to stop putting your guns in your mouths and get in the fight. Major Beau Biden. President Biden, this killed your son. The fact that the DOD is still using burn pits right now while we talk shows that they will never stop until they're forced to. The fact that the VA continues after 20 years to say, we don't understand how people exposed to toxic exposures can be sick, shows that they will never stop until someone forces them to. We need your help. Every day that passes is one that one more person gets sick who possibly could have been diagnosed early and maybe saved for a little longer. If that's not enough, I'm sorry? Come back to that one second. We'll open it up to the town hall portion. In the wake, it doesn't have to end like this. In the wake of 9/11, Americans needed someone to lift them up. They looked towards the 9/11 first responders who are risking everything to desperately search for victims. They looked towards us to send us to war so they could feel safe. When we were called on to lift you up, we responded. We need all of you to lift us up. you all can restore the memories and dignities of these fallen warfighters. You can help us out of the darkness by showing us that we haven't been abandoned. All of you can put pressure on our legislators to do their jobs and grant presumptive benefits. All of you can stop us from being burned. We fought for you. Fight for us. They aren't just burning trash, they're burning us. Thank you.
All right, I think we're going to give an opportunity for anyone here who wants to ask any of our panelists questions. I think we have someone with a microphone who's going to come around, and if you raise your hand and have a question for any one of our panelists, just please, if you're not addressing it to anyone in particular, that's fine, but we want to open it up for any questions you have. So go ahead and speak up if you want to be heard. Yes. Okay. Okay.
Realize it was this bad. I knew a doctor in Tennessee who did a study and connected it absolutely all the way back. He served in the Gulf War. He and another doctor and a laboratory technician ran all the tests at that on when they found out he could positively connect it. They walked into the colonel in the reserves office and said, you have your choice. You can take a forcible early retirement with full benefits or you're fired. It doesn't matter. Pick up your briefcase, leave your office. All of this is ours, and it disappeared. I know how long you've been fighting it, and I'd just like not to minimize any of it. There were burn pits going all the way back to Vietnam. It's been going on that many more years, and various kinds of cancers and lung and throat, and please keep at it. Again, I commend you.
I think Mr. Ryan's on the phone, so we're going to try and see if we can hook the phone up to the microphone and see if we can have him speak.
Okay. Do you want to try this one? If that one doesn't work, well, I'll try this. We know it works.
Okay, Congressman, if you want to make a statement, I'm going to hold my phone to the microphone, and everyone can hear you.
Okay, terrific. Hey, everybody, I'm really sorry I couldn't be there. I was looking forward to this for the last couple of weeks to actually be with everyone, and I'm glad, Susan, thank you for, Patrick, thank you for getting me connected to this event. This is a big issue. I think we played the floor speech and floor statement that I made. I think this issue of burn pits and the health ramifications that I mentioned, especially with the Keith Robinson legislation that we're putting together. I think this issue of mental health with our vets are these top issues that we have to deal with. And as I said in the speech, we got to deal with it now. We have to deal with it now. There's no time to wait. There's no bureaucracy we need to wait for. We've got to act. We've got to make this happen. Just my heart breaks when I see Brielle and had a chance to meet her and learn the story of not just he, but others. And it's just heartbreaking for me. And you just got to keep moving on this stuff. And I just wanted to make sure, even though I couldn't be there with you, that you guys know, my passion around this issue, my commitment to you around this issue. We're going to continue everyone. I appreciate your continuing to raise this issue so we can apply the political pressure that we need. As I said, we're going to keep working very closely with Mark DeCrano, who's the chair of the committee, all in on trying to get this done. So I'll leave it at that, Susan, and a big hug to you and to everybody there for all your great work.
Thank you. We'll see you soon, maybe. Yeah, Danielle, here, he wants to say hello. Say it again. He's saying hi to Daniel.
Hi, Tim Ryan. Hey, Danielle. Just a big hug to you, too, and thanks for all you're doing. It means so much, and just hope we can use this horrible tragedy that you guys went through with Heath and your family to try to save lives, and I know that's what you're committed to, and that's what I'm committed to, and there's no words that can, make the pain go away, but we can try to turn it into some positive and save some lives, and I think that's what he would want. So I'll leave it at that. Happy to take any questions that you may have.
Anybody have a question for Congressman before we let him go? What, the presumptive benefits bill?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Any speculation on when it will?
I can answer that. I don't think we need a congressman to answer that. It's been somewhat delayed for 90 days to give the VA more time to do more research. So.
This is on top of the 7,305 days they've already had over the last 2 years.
Okay. Does anyone else have a question for Mr. Ryan?
Yes, I do. Okay. My question is, as it relates to the current situation, kind of resembles the Blue Water presumptive exposure to Agent Orange. Since VA is discretionary funding, has that even been addressed? You guys are attacking the approach of getting this condition Service Connect, rightfully so. But how are they going to fund and Service Connect all these people, especially at 100%? There needs to be funding, and that needs to be taken into the consideration of this whole equation.
Could you hear that, Tim?
I couldn't hear it.
Okay. Okay, he was asking about the Blue Water funding, the Blue Water Navy funding, and if that's being considered in this.
The actual question is since VA has discretionary funding, unlike DOD, which is appropriated monies every year, my question is how are they going to fund for the service-connected disabilities associated with this condition? They worked through this with the Blue Water, or Agent Orange exposure, the Blue Water, and that was a few years ago. This resembles the same thing. I mean, it's a precedent that's already been, that has been set. My thing is that the attention is being given to the situation. I don't understand why there isn't a Tiger team addressing this situation, but once it's rectified, people are service connected, how are they going to be paid?
Were you able to get that?
No, he's just really muffled.
It's too muffled. He was asking about the VA discretionary spending and why that's not being used.
Funding, ma'am, not
funding,
spending.
I'm sorry, funding. And why that's not being used to take care of these service-connected illnesses.
I heard him mention Blue Water Navy, or is he talking about the burn pit?
He mentioned Blue Water Navy as an example of what they did for them, and now he's asking why it's not being done for the burn pits, I think.
Correct.
Okay, that was the question.
Yeah, no, I think this is the reason we need the data, and you got to make the argument to the VA, which to me seems pretty obvious, and that's why I say we shouldn't be screwing around with a bunch of bureaucracy. But it does have to pass some, standard that this actually happened. Now, I think that's clear. They should have that done by now. But we're going to keep pushing them to get the okay or the certification or whatever it may be. And then we have a 13% increase in discretionary dollars in this year's appropriations bill that we hope to pass in the next couple of weeks. That's total domestic spending increase. I'm not exactly sure what the VA increase is, and I can find that out and share that with Susan. And away or already been diagnosed with a terminal illness, we're actually able to catch this earlier and save some lives. So we're trying to work it from multiple angles.
Okay. Sure. You want to hang up, Mr. Orange?
You're asking about
You
the
got another
funding,
meeting?
but here's the thing. The VA has ignored Agent Orange listed presumptive conditions for decades. They have ignored blue water for a couple decades now. They are ignoring Gulf War illness problems for decades. We do not want the burn pits to become another Agent Orange, which it already has. And I mean, I believed in 2009, President Obama even said it was not going to become another burn pit issue. It was not going to become another Agent Orange. Guess what? People on Capitol Hill sent us over to these places. They need to provide the funding to make sure we are getting the health care that we need as the veterans that fought in the wars that they sent us to. So you need to ask Capitol Hill, why are they not giving the funding to the VA to provide for the veterans that they are slowly letting die?
First and foremost, I concur with everything you're saying. I served in the Army. I'm 100% service connected, so I know where you're coming from. And if you want to add to the list, military sexual trauma also.
Same here.
So I'm fully aware of what is going on, but those questions need to be asked, and it's sad. And being a veteran, fact of the matter is, I understand that whole mindset of, okay, let them die, we don't have to pay them. I get that. In full disclosure, I did work for the Department of Veterans Affairs, along with some of my other colleagues who worked in Arizona and ran into situations as it pertained to wait times and blowing the whistle and all that stuff. And I've worked for 3 different Secretary of Veterans Affairs. It shouldn't take a 60 minutes interview or town hall meeting to bring this to the forefront. I'm glad this discussion is going on because, as they say, the squeaky wheel gets greased.
All right.
Yeah.
Can you guys hear me? Okay, I'm going to add something to that. You got a great question, how we're going to pay for this. And this is something that we hear time and time again, but like John said, this is kind of like saying, hey, I just had this steak dinner, but I don't know how I'm going to pay for it, so I'm not going to. The price is already being paid. We're paying for it. And not only, this is like basically a forced death march. And not only are we the ones paying that price, but our spouses and our children are being conscripted in the service also. As far as how are we going to pay for this, that's Congress's job. They've had 20 years to figure that out. We're dying now, so we need solutions now. Thank you.
And to add on to that too, is the VA doesn't need legislation passed to provide us benefits. They can do it on their own. They don't need Congress saying, hey, you have to give these guys these benefits. The VA can already do it. They already have the approval. When the VA was first developed, that approval was guaranteed 100% for the life of the VA. They don't need Congress and the Senate telling them what to do. They can do it on their own, and they're refusing to. And for them to say there's no scientific proof that burn pits are what's making us sick, I'm their scientific proof. I've been poked, prodded, so much blood drawn out of me, so many x-rays, CAT scans, MRIs. Over the last 30 years, they've got their scientific proof. Now, as far as the funding goes, the VA currently has a yearly budget of $6 million to fight veteran suicide. Over the last 4 years, they spent $6,000 of that $6 million annually. Not $6,000 a year, $6,000 over 4 years is all they spent.
That's why they're all still in the street. That's why my son's
You got it. That's why my brother ended up committing suicide, because they don't care. So when it comes to the funding, and for like Representative Jim Banks of Indiana to send us a letter saying he can't support this presumptive benefits because it will cost too much. He runs on being a veteran and that he served in Afghanistan. Now, if he's going to do that, but then tell us, veterans, to our face, that our lives cost too much, it's time for the rest of America to speak up against these guys and say, hey, find the funding. That's your job. That's why we elected you. If you do not want to do that and hide behind the fact that it'll cost too much, then get out and let's get somebody else into that office that'll give a damn about us.
Hey, we've got another question over here, so we're going to go to that real quick. Just one thing, on the brochures you got this morning, or this afternoon, there's a couple of QR codes on them. One of them goes to a site called Fiscal Note, and if you go to that, then that will send messages to all the legislators in your district. We'll take one more question, and then I think we're going to wrap it up. If anyone has questions and answers, please feel free to come up. Again, we are so sorry this ran over. There were too many things outside of our control. But thank you very much for coming. Your question, and then we'll wrap it up.
Real quick, I can talk loud. Are we in our own separate silos? Because I'm part of a Fort McClellan group addressing the fact that we were exposed to toxic chemicals there. Also, where I was stationed in Hawaii, toxic chemicals, toxic environment, and we've had a lot of problems there. Do we need to get the different groups together that we show how much veterans and their families have been affected by serving?
All right. Actually, part of this, if you notice, it's some of these bills have burn pits and toxic exposure. So we're trying to cover all of it.
I know,
now,
but the people don't know that.
Right.
The
Right.
bills are there.
The thing is, with this presumptive benefits warfighter bill right now, that bill is only going to cover, is it post 9/11 or is it Desert Storm too? Desert Storm and after. And then there will be a list of countries, if the person served in that, one of those countries and developed one of the listed illnesses. Now, right now, the House passed that bill, and there's, I think, 32 illnesses listed, plus all cancers, so it's actually more. Now, the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee, when they debated it, they took most of the illnesses out. So right now, when I said earlier that this bill is going to be passed on 90 days, or we'll consider it again, they're considering several presumptive illnesses, and I believe it's constrictive bronchiolitis, lung cancer, and a couple other illnesses. So there's still going to be thousands left behind, because there's pancreatic cancers, there's colon cancer, there's so many other cancers and other illnesses, right.
How can we get the rest of the groups to join, all of us join together, because that is millions of people.
3.5 million people. I think what you're asking is for an organization of the various groups, so there's one larger powerhouse of veteran interests. And that's one of the issues that we've been trying to work with Thiel and Stewart. Warfighter 2021 is always looking for other groups who want to get involved too, so that we can take all of these and be one larger legislative voice.
now, I know if you're a Marine stationed at like 29 Palms and a few other bases, you're already eligible for presumptive benefits because of the contaminated drinking water that were on those bases.
And McClellan.
Now, I was stationed at George Air Force Base, which is considered one of the most toxic bases in the United States, and that was due to radiation. All the waste from when they were testing the nuclear bombs got buried at George Air Force Base. So they think a lot of that was exposed to us through our drinking water and everything else. Was that? So, yes, you are correct.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to do one grace question real quick, just because Terry Evans was also one of the veterans that Ken Gordon first wrote about. So since he's got a question, I'll give him the 2 seconds.
Terry was actually you were in the Middle East as a contractor, though, not a.
That's my question.
Yeah, right.
I'm from a whole other group.
Right.
The civilian contractors. I spent 3 years in Iraq training soldiers. I came back sick. I don't have a VA. What's my options? You know, I am on disability. Doesn't pay. Doesn't pay my medical. So
Yeah, we'd like
where
to,
do we fall?
I think this legislation for presumptive benefits is definitely only for veterans with service connected, as you know. But isn't there is another part of there is an act that you can claim on, I think. I'll find that out and I'll let you know. Because there is something for this, there is something through the government, through the federal government for contractors. I can't think of the name of it right now, but I'll find out from Rosie and let you know, okay?
Terry, that's a great question and a great point, because there's a number of contractors who went over. So when we say 3.5 million people, that's talking service members. That's not talking contractors, KBR, other government agencies, NSA, CIA, FBI. Any alphabet soup that might happen to be out there is also potentially exposed to this. Now, there's two fronts that are coming from this. One is the benefits, but one is also recognizing the treatments. I work in critical care, and most of the doctors who I talk to about this, in fact, I had one neurosurgeon when I was talking about glioblastomas, told me, well, you know, this just sounds like that Agent Orange nonsense. It's unfortunate when bad things happen to good people, but sometimes they just need something to blame it on. So there is the factor of needing benefits, but there's also the factor of needing to recognize what's going on, and there's two fronts. Now, the one can help you immediately. The other, like they said, they'll talk to Rosie. But it needs work, and it's, you know, we need more voices on that. Kevin might have an answer for that too.
To answer the first question that you had, when I had the opportunity, I'm sorry. There we go. Okay, so to answer your question, first of all, Okinawa, Japan, there's Thailand, there's the water issues and the contaminations between regular or military bases stateside, and they're trying to come up with a plan either to put this into the toxic exposure portion of the burn pit issue, or they're trying to make it separately. So what I would recommend to you is I would recommend talking to us after this to see if we can't conjoin together to come up with a plan to have those issues. They're trying to debate right now between Congress and the Senate to put this in that position or to make that a separate entity and bring it to the exposure. For your question, a contractor did sue the federal government and won. And her name, I think she didn't get very much, but she still won. And what that's doing is setting the precedents for the rest of the contractors to join together. I do have information on another contractor who's looking at options and bringing a bunch of contractor folks together to kind of push that issue and push that envelope with the fact that you went over there, you trained, you Halliburton, KBR, whatever portion of that contract that you were under, to get them to recognize the contractors as well. So that's something else we can discuss and talk about as well if you'd like. But thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right, let's just wrap that up for now, and please feel free to stick around and talk to some of our panelists here. I know we've kept you a lot longer than we said we would, so I appreciate all the questions. I'm so glad that someone pointed out Terry, because I was going to raise that issue as well, that you know, the VA is great, but that doesn't cover everyone affected by this. I also want to make one little plug on a sort of personal note, and that is one way to raise awareness is to reach out to someone in the media as well. I can't guarantee that everyone will respond to it, but I know that I did when Susan reached out to me, and that can be a very powerful motivator. I think State Senator Craig actually quoted a line or two from my story talking about Brielle and Heath. And so, you know, obviously these stories stick with people, and sometimes they can spur action. So that's another avenue you can pursue too. You can pursue your legislator, you can pursue perhaps your local friendly journalist. So thanks again for coming, everyone. We really appreciate it, and feel free to stick around.
Thank you.
Terry.